The the great thing about this lifestyle is that, a lot of people think of it as keto is just this quick weight loss thing. The vast majority of our clients over the past 20 years, they stick with it because of how they feel.
This episode is brought to you by Basic Keto Box. Basic Keto Box is a premium subscription box for keto dieters. It offers a wide variety of keto-friendly snacks delivered right to your door. Not only that, with your subscription box, you also get a 30-day meal plan that includes breakfast, lunch, and dinner, complete with macronutrients in every meal. We have an exclusive deal just for Ketones and Coffee podcast listeners. Receive an extra 20% off with your first month subscription. Head on over to basicketobox.ca to subscribe today. Hey guys, welcome to the Ketones and Coffee podcast, where I bring in guests to discuss their own personal experience with a ketogenic diet. Welcome to our Carnivore Special episode. Our next guest is one that doesn't need any introductions. He has now been on keto for almost 2 decades. But like most of us, he didn't always start this way. When his wife had to change her lifestyle to keto, he gradually discovered its health benefits. And astonished with the results, he has since dedicated his life to the science behind the keto lifestyle. He is a best-selling author, speaker, and an educator in the keto space. Please welcome Craig Emmerich. Hey, how's it going, Craig? How's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm pretty good. So, I'd like to congratulate you on a couple best-selling books you co-authored along with your wife Maria.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if you are looking to educate yourself on this diet, facts, science, tips to success, and meal plans, and if you have questions about keto diet or the validity of the keto lifestyle, definitely check out this book. It's called Keto: The Ultimate Guide to Success on the Ketogenic Diet, including simplified science and no-cook meal plans. It addresses a lot of common questions and misconception we all have when we start experimenting on keto. I'll link it in the description below so you guys can check that out. And also, your most recent book, it's called The Carnivore Cookbook. Again, congratulations, Craig. It's wonderful that you guys are working on projects like these, and we'll have a chance to talk about it towards the end. So definitely, guys, stay tuned for that. So, but first, I'd like to start by saying, learning stories from other people inspires me to do what I do. I help by sharing great stories to hopefully inspire someone. If we can just reach one person and somehow impact his or her life, it's definitely worth it for me. And I'd like to take this time, Craig, to thank you and your wife for the work that you do. You guys are so incredible and you've changed so many lives across the world. Um,
Thank you so much. Yeah,
because,
it's a
yeah,
rewarding work helping people get healthy, that's for sure.
absolutely, absolutely. Your passion and dedication to this lifestyle. So thank you. You guys are masters of your craft. It's really inspiring to watch. So thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
But I'd like to know how you got started with keto, and I always start this with
Yeah.
my guest. And in the book, you've mentioned that your wife Maria was a great influence to you starting off, and however, we both know how hard it is to let go of those habits. Me
Yeah.
myself, um, our culture, we're always so used to having rice with all of our meals in every meal actually. So I want to know, what was it like for you when you started?
Yeah, my wife, she started down this path over 20 years ago now, and she was having health issues, IBS, PCOS, acid reflux, and had extra weight she was carrying around that she wanted to get rid of that she just could not get rid of, even though she was
Mm,
doing all the right things like healthy whole grains and low fat and exercising more, running marathons, and all this stuff was not getting better.
mhm,
And so she just started researching on her own and implementing what she was finding. Um, and it worked. She reversed her issues, even though she stopped running marathons
mhm,
because of the hard on her joints. She lost the extra weight, and it worked. And so people were asking her how she did it. And that's how she kind of started snowballing into this and helping people. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Myself, again, my tradition comes from a German background,
Mm-hmm.
and I brewed my own beer and kind of had that
Yeah.
whole uh, German background that was hard to break. And took me about, I don't know, 5 years after her, 4 or 5 years after her,
Mm-hmm.
before I came fully around to it. And it
Mm-hmm.
was mostly because she was not only her leading by example, but um, I would eat the food she made during the week.
Mm-hmm.
The weekends I would have whatever I wanted, and I just started to notice more and more how terrible I felt on the weekends, and I didn't want to feel that way anymore. So
Yeah.
I just kind of got rid of that extra stuff and got rid of the beer and the wheat, all the wheat that came with that,
Yeah.
and I just felt so much better.
That's awesome to hear. What I've discovered the past year when I started this is people would, would only get on the ketogenic diet because of a scare most of the time. Um,
Yeah.
maybe, a diagnosis or whatnot. So how was the feeling of having to let go of some of the stuff that you've that basically tattooed in your brain when you were growing up? How hard
Yeah,
was that?
it's not easy, and it's I think the great thing about this lifestyle is that well, a couple things. Number one, a lot of people think of it as keto is just this, quick weight loss thing, and that's all it's for.
Mm-hmm.
And the vast majority of our clients over the past 20 years, they stick with it because of how they feel and how
Right.
their numbers have improved on their labs, and
Mm-hmm.
they've reversed all these conditions, autoimmune disorders and all these things have
Mm-hmm.
the symptoms have gone away, and they just feel so much better. That's why they stick with it, not because of the weight loss. The weight loss is like just an extra benefit
Mm-hmm.
to how good they feel. And I think that is kind of a positive reinforcement, to help keep you on the path and staying healthy. And I think that, also when you fully commit to it, if you do stray away, you
Mm-hmm.
kind of see what your body's natural reaction is to some of these foods. If you're constantly bombarding the body with massive amounts of glucose and carbohydrates
Mm-hmm.
and wheat and these other possible allergens that you could be eating that are inflaming the body. These things, when you're eating them all the time, or your body's always in that state, it's kind of ready for that, right? So it's got lots of insulin around, and it's got antibodies to deal with all this stuff that's coming into the body, and so you don't notice the day-to-day effects as much. When you eliminate all that stuff, and then all of a sudden maybe you reintroduce it on a weekend or a holiday, boom, you feel hungover for a day or two because the
Yeah.
body's just not ready for that. And it shows you kind of what that stuff is doing to your body. You just don't see, you get to see the real reaction of your body once you eliminate it. And I think that could be a real powerful reinforcement of, what, my
Yeah.
body doesn't like this stuff.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you said this is a lifestyle change, and having to go back to your old ways isn't going to work, isn't sustainable.
Yeah.
So talk to me about the difference between having a mindset of, okay, this is a diet, this is just diet, this is just for weight loss, or somebody that would use this as a lifestyle. Um, are you able to talk about the difference between the two?
We definitely recommend everyone look at it as a lifestyle. I mean, what we know for sure about dieting is that it doesn't work. You, if
Yep.
you if you go on any diet, I don't care what diet it is, and you lose weight, and you go back to the way that made you gain weight,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna regain the weight. Like it's,
Mm-hmm.
I think there's an old quote from Einstein, I believe it was. It said, if you keep uh, doing this same experiment over and over and expecting different results, that's the definition of insanity.
Yep.
You can't go back to what made you
Yeah.
overweight and sick and expect it to not make you overweight and sick again. So, that's there's definitely a mindset there that has to be there, that this is a lifestyle. I'm going to get healthier. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
lose the weight. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
feel amazing, have tons of energy and mental clarity. And if I go off of that, I'm going to lose all that. So you have to have that as sort of a mindset. And we can get further into this, but like in our carnivore cookbook, I dove into some of the science
Mm-hmm.
that shows that we're really designed to eat this way. This is how we're really designed to eat, is primarily a protein focused diet
Yeah.
that our ancestors became human
Mm-hmm.
because they ate that way.
So when you get on the keto diet, did you start carnivore right away, or how did you get started with it?
So I, again, back to Maria's story, she had these health issues. It took me longer to come along because at the time I didn't have any health issues. I
Mm-hmm.
had maybe 30 extra pounds I could
Mm-hmm.
lose, but
Mm-hmm.
other than that I didn't have any health issues that I know of. So
Yeah.
that's why it took me a little longer to kind of come around, because I didn't have that daily reminder of acid reflux or the things
Yeah.
that she had. But over time I did, and I felt great. And then about 8-9 years ago, I started having increased pain in my
Mm.
back, lower back, into
Mm-hmm.
my neck. Long story short, over 6 to 7 years, it progressed and got worse and worse. And I finally was diagnosed with Lyme disease.
Mm.
And Lyme disease, for those who don't know, it's from a tick,
Mm-hmm.
typically from a tick bite. It
Yep.
When it gets chronic, like it did with me, it can be a
Mm-hmm.
very debilitating thing where
Mm.
constant pain. I've now got limited mobility and all these problems. Um, what I tried all the standard treatments over a year and a half to 2 years with very little to no success in treating the issues.
Mm-hmm.
I then decided about 3 years ago to switch to a carnivore diet to
Mm-hmm.
see if that would help, because in the carnivore space,
Mm-hmm.
have an engineering background, so I really like to dive into things and research. And I knew that some of the people that started carnivore, like Charlene Anderson, who's been carnivore for 20 years now,
Mm-hmm.
she started it primarily to help with her Lyme disease,
Mm.
and found relief from her Lyme disease by doing it. So I dove in about 3 years ago, and I saw the most relief I've seen from anything I've tried
Mm-hmm.
with carnivore for my Lyme disease. So we look at carnivore versus keto. It's
Mm-hmm.
Carnivore is just a subset of keto. It's
Yep.
just keto without plants,
Mm-hmm.
and we see it as a tool. If you've got autoimmune disorder, Lyme disease, different things that you're not seeing total relief on with keto, going to carnivore might be the next option to see if that can give you the health improvements you're looking for.
Carnivore sounds amazing, by the way. and
It can be really great.
mm,
Some people really like the variety and whatnot of vegetables.
mm-hmm.
Other people just love their meat,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and you can have that. Uh, and again, I mentioned earlier, this is kind of how we evolved. There's been lots of these studies where they look at the isotopic analysis of the collagen in the fossils of early human bones and
Mm-hmm.
Neanderthals. And when you look at that collagen and you look for the nitrogen content, you can tell what proteins they ate, because you can tell what nitrogens are in there.
Mm-hmm.
So you can tell, oh, the proteins came from these plants or from
Mm-hmm.
these animals. You can even
Mm-hmm.
say what kind of animals the proteins they ate came from. And so they did these analysis, and there's dozens of these studies now of these bones, and they show that these early humans, this is when we became human, right? We grew these big brains during this time period, and became started hunting and all that. Well, during that time period, they were eating primarily animal proteins.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, if you look on a chart, they also tested lions, hyenas of that same time period, and humans were higher on the food chain and just as carnivorous as those lions and cheetahs. And
Mm.
so what they were eating is primarily big herbivores like
Mm-hmm.
woolly mammoths
Yep.
and rhinos. And so what there was a recent discovery in Europe as well of this pit where they found all these woolly mammoth bones. So what they did is these early humans, they dug a pit and then they chased the woolly mammoths until one of them
Mm-hmm.
fell in the pit. And then they
Mm.
would kill it and they'd eat it for months and months, right? Because one cow could feed a human for like a year, one person. A woolly mammoth could feed a whole tribe for
Mm-hmm.
months and months.
Mm-hmm.
So that's primarily what they were eating. And so that's what made us human in the first place.
I love this about your books. You always start with the science first.
Yes.
I love it personally because when I was starting, if I'd like to do some research beforehand for your books, I can just get this book and start reading because everything I need to know is here. Whether I want to start it today or just want to educate myself on the diet, the book kind of gives you both. So I really wish that I had, your book starting off keto and sort of, addressing all the doubts and questions I had at the time. Uh, you know,
That's one of
throwing,
the
yeah.
sorry, that was it. Thank you. But that's one of the reasons we originally wrote the book Keto,
Mm-hmm,
is because, and we did a whole section in there on these myths of keto. Because what happened was, Maria and I have been doing this. I've been keto now for 16, 17 years. She's been for over
mm-hmm,
20. She's helped all these clients over those years. And we've learned what works and what does not. And over the past 3 or 4 years, when keto got really popular,
mm-hmm,
a lot of these kind of keto myths started showing up. And that's when we wrote this book, because we wanted to kind of dispel some of those myths of, you have to eat 90% fat, or, these things that are really therapeutic ketogenic diets for like epilepsy,
mm-hmm.
but not for general public, for weight loss and all this stuff. And so we tried to lay the case in that book of, here's the science and here's how our bodies work,
Mm-hmm.
and based on that and your goals, here's how you can do it properly, not only for your goals, but also for health and longevity, and make it a lifestyle. So those were the goals of that book.
If for anyone that wants to check out this book, Keto, when did you release that first book, Keto?
Keto, I think keto's about 3 years old now.
Yeah, are
So we
you?
wrote it four
It
to
says
five years ago.
4 to 5 years ago. It says volume one. Are you guys working on volume two anytime soon?
Oh, I no, we're not.
Yeah,
I'm I didn't realize it said volume one, but no, it's a single volume book.
man. But this book has everything. I linked this book in the description below so you guys can check it out. Really, really interesting stuff. It's complete with links to sources. Just amazing. Just amazing book.
Thank
I
you.
wish I really have this book when I was starting, and now I have it. And I'd like to talk about that book. First of all, Keto. Uh, you talked about ailments, and we were led to believe that ailments were mostly genetic and cannot be
Yeah.
avoided.
Yep.
This is so interesting because it gives me so much hope,
Yes.
because this is why your doctor may ask you if your family has a history of, fill in the blank, right?
Yep.
And in your book, you said your genetic makeup only increases the likelihood that you might develop a disease if you
Yep.
give it the wrong input. This is so interesting. Can you elaborate on that
Exactly.
a little bit?
Exactly. Yeah. I think this is kind of the engineering mind that I have, that I look at things kind of as a system, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, if back in my engineering days, if I was working on a chip and my outputs were wrong, the very first thing I'm going to do is check to make sure that the inputs to the chip were right.
Mm-hmm.
So is it the chip that's the problem, or was it the inputs that were the problem, right? And I look at the human body a lot the same. As if I've got bad outputs, if I've got metabolic disorder, diabetes, cancer, autoimmune disorders, all these different conditions, those are bad outputs. So what were the inputs that could have led to that bad output?
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of those. There's, diet is obviously a huge one. But there's other inputs like, are you getting enough sleep? Are you exercising enough? Are you not smoking? That's like a negative input, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's all these things that you can. Are you getting enough sunlight and vitamin D? It's very important aspect of an input to the body. And so if these inputs get off, that's when all these outputs get messed up. And so if you go back and fix the root cause, the inputs, a lot of these things can change around. And uh, you know this all led from, again, the years that we've been doing this, we kept seeing. And in about, I don't know, 9 years ago, I decided to start saving these testimonies we were getting, because we'd get these amazing testimonies from people of, you know I remember this one we have of a woman who was on 600 pills a month that she was
Mm-hmm.
taking. So
Mm-hmm.
So she was taking 20 pills per day
Mm-hmm.
of different prescriptions. She got off all of them in like 2 months of eating this way.
Wow.
And that's like, holy cow, eye
Yep.
opening. People with
Mm-hmm.
Parkinson's who
Yep.
had no feeling in their heels and were unable to really walk, suddenly able to walk on their own again.
Mm-hmm.
And they can have feeling in their heel again. People with autoimmune disorders that are getting their symptoms are going away. We're getting these testimonies. I mean, we now in the last since I've started keeping these, we've got thousands, if not 10,000 testimonies of every condition you can imagine getting vastly improved when they fix the inputs. So this isn't like a death sentence that your
Mm-hmm.
genetics are going to predispose you to be this way.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of like tipping the scales, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
If you have bad inputs, you're more likely to get that bad outcome quicker than somebody else if you have the genetics. Uh, but it doesn't mean you are going to get that result. If you fix the inputs, you won't get that bad output still, even though the genetics predispose you to get that bad output.
This is why I love this path so much, Craig. Uh, debunking a lot of nutritional guidelines. That's why I love your book so much because you started with it's a huge list, by the way. There's a list of misconceptions and incorrect statements from the nutritional guideline, and it's amazing to see how people are getting better from chronic illness, type 2 diabetes,
Yeah,
supposed to be chronic,
yeah.
but now I have friends in the keto community that has reversed their type 2 diabetes in under 6 months.
We had one client. So we've had hundreds of clients that have reversed
Mm-hmm.
their diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and many that have managed their type 1 diabetes with this lifestyle.
Mm.
Very limited. Their requirements for insulin go drastically down.
Mm-hmm.
But type 2 diabetes, so many that have reversed everything from uh, A1C, is normal. All
Mm-hmm.
of these things in the normal. They don't
Mm-hmm.
need insulin. They don't. And one of them, it was 3 months. And if you know what an A1C is, A1C is the
Yep.
average blood glucose over the past 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what a measure of based on the blood.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in 3 months, their A1C went from 11, I think it was
Mm.
11.1, in 3 months down to 5.4, which is below diabetic range. So from extremely diabetic to
Mm-hmm.
below diabetic. And I assume the next 3 months after that, because you'd get a full 3 months of this new lifestyle, they would probably go closer to like 5, which is like a great range for blood glucose, all the way from severely diabetic
Mm-hmm.
in a matter of months. It's crazy how quickly this can be reversed.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about, healthcare in general has this kind of issue that, again, they tend to look at it as more as it's a genetic problem. There's nothing you can do about it. So let's throw a band-aid on the outputs.
Mm-hmm.
Let's give you a prescription that kind of masks the
Mm.
symptoms of the outputs
Mm-hmm.
and not actually fix the inputs. That's kind of what we do in healthcare today,
Mm.
which is terrible for a number of reasons because you never really fix the problem. You're just putting
Mm-hmm.
band-aids on the symptoms,
Yep.
and it makes you dependent on this prescription for life. And
Mm-hmm.
all these prescriptions have side effects and all these issues, and they cost a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back and just fix the inputs, which many times saves people money
Mm-hmm.
because if when you eat this way, it actually can cost less than
Mm-hmm.
eating standard American diet,
Mm-hmm.
and then you don't have to pay for all the prescriptions and everything. It saves everybody so much money, and
Exactly.
healthcare so much money. It's just it is a master solution to the healthcare
Mm.
problem we have in the United States.
My problem with it, Craig, is that when doctors, let's say, they wouldn't recommend having to go to your dietitian or having to change your lifestyle. They kind of expect you to take these meds.
Yeah.
Um, and when I was younger, I had an episode where I couldn't sleep for a few days. Right,
Mm.
I went to my doctor, prescribed me with sleeping pills,
Yeah.
and I don't think sleeping was the problem. I was depressed. I was stressed out at work,
Yeah.
and with these doctors, they don't even give you another option. Um, they if you don't do your own research, they expect you to take these meds, and that's my problem with it, really.
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons for that, you know. Uh, like Maria, another example of that is Maria went in to the doctor for something shortly after I had lost my job in the big downturn in I think it was 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And she went in and talked to the doctor, and she talked about this, and the doctor said, "Do you want an antidepressant?" And
Mm,
she's like, she was going to give her a prescription. And Maria's like,
really?
"No, I'm not depressed. I'm sad. Like,
Mm,
it was a bad day. It was a bad day. My husband lost his job. Like,
mm-hmm.
this is not time to get on cooked on a prescription,
Wow.
right?" And, part of this problem too is the system.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we know lots of doctors now that we work with, and one of them, Ted Neiman out in Seattle. He's a doctor that um, he we I was sitting down talking with him about this, and he said, for reimbursement from insurance,
Mm-hmm.
if I sit down with a patient and I spend 10 minutes with them and give them two prescriptions, I get reimbursed more money than if I spend an hour with that client talking to them about nutrition and how to change their diet.
Mm-hmm.
It's the way the system is set up.
Mm-hmm.
You push the prescriptions, you get more, that doctor gets more reimbursement.
Mm-hmm.
If you sit for 4 times as long and talk to them about changing lifestyle, they get less money back
Mm-hmm.
for for that hour than they would have gotten for 15 minutes in a prescription.
Mm-hmm.
So you're disincentivizing the doctors to do what is the right thing, which is
Mm-hmm.
help them change their lifestyle.
So, wow, there's so much to unpack
Yeah.
there, and it may be a topic for another day, but that's I love what you're doing, Craig, and with your wife. I love how you're helping people with this diet. Do you get clients that had approached you, doesn't know anything about the keto diet, but had the recent diagnosis of, may say, for example, a type 2 diabetes? Do you get those clients where don't know anything about keto but would like to do anything, and they may have seen it online where people are reversing this, and or do you get a mix of people that actually already know about the keto diet and have done their own research, or do you get those people that uh, would just, you know, come to you and not knowing anything about the diet?
Uh, I think a little of both, but I would say
Mm-hmm.
probably more if they have diabetes. I would
Mm-hmm.
say at least more recently,
Mm-hmm.
it's becoming more common. This is what has been helped with the popularity of keto in the last few years, is that
Mm-hmm.
it's become more common that if somebody is diagnosed with diabetes,
Mm-hmm.
they then look to keto, and
Mm-hmm.
didn't used to be the case. They didn't,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's now looked at as a way to manage diabetes, which is
Mm-hmm.
good. This is, progressing in
Mm-hmm.
common beliefs and stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
what's interesting about it is, and this, if I could do a little sidetrack on this,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know, type 2 diabetes is really essentially a kind of energy toxicity state in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is, um, your adipocytes, which are your fat cells, that's where you store your fat. And these fat cells, they can only store so much fat in them. You may have heard this, that when you're young, you uh, typically you grow so many fat cells on your body, and then as you get older, you don't really make new fat cells. You just kind of enlarge or shrink the fat cells you have. Well, this actually leads to the state of why type 2 diabetes happens. And what happens is, if you have fat cells and a lot of them get overstuffed and inflamed to the point where they can't store any more fat or they're going to burst,
Mm-hmm.
the fat cell says, reject insulin, because I don't want to store any more fat. I'm
Mm-hmm.
at my limit. And when a lot of fat cells get that way, you're becoming increasingly insulin resistant. They're resisting the insulin to store that fat because they're stuffed. And again, because whatever reason, most people don't create a lot of new fat cells when they get older, you hit your limit and all the fat cells are inflamed. Now the fat has no place to go. And
Mm.
so the fat starts accumulating in your pancreas and your liver and fatty liver. And this is, metabolic syndrome, diabetes. This is the snowball that happens. This can happen if you're 400 pounds
Mm.
or if you're 120 pounds.
Mm.
Because this is why somebody can be 120 pounds and
Mm.
have type 2 diabetes
Mm.
because they don't have a lot of fat cells. Genetically,
Mm.
whatever the reason was, but maybe they were lean when they were little,
Mm.
they don't have a lot of fat cells. And so it doesn't take a lot of extra weight to inflame the
Mm.
fat cells they do have and cause insulin resistance, diabetes. And this is why, uh, and I know it's more common in the Asian culture to be not as overweight and still have diabetes because, again, genetics play factors in that. Um, but the root cause is still the same. You've got too much energy inflaming the fat cells, and the best way to reverse that is to,
Mm.
become a fat burner, if you will, a keto,
Yep.
and shrink those fat cells and reverse that resistance.
Just because we're slim on time, Craig, I'd like to ask you a few questions about the
Sure.
carnivore diet and
Yeah.
your book. So, um, when I'd like to talk to you about nutritional density of this diet, carnivore diet. You may be asked this a lot. Where do you get your vitamins and minerals when you're on a carnivore diet and
Hmm.
you're not having your greens and your fruits and all that? Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, definitely. It's all kind of started about 5, 6 years ago when we started writing the keto book, and we adopted our kids. We have two sons. We adopted from Ethiopia, and when we brought them home, we started just feeding them what we ate.
Mm-hmm.
Meat, low carb veggies, and a protein focused kind of diet. And from siblings and our the grandparents were asking, they have to have their veggies, right? They
Mm-hmm.
need more veggies to get their nutrients. And that's kind of where this started, where I started looking into it to say, okay, let's look at what the facts are. Let's look at nutrient density of these different foods. And I started
Mm-hmm.
making these charts.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I had been in this keto nutrition space for, I don't know, 8 years or something. And so thought I had a really good understanding of nutrition and biology and all that. And yet, when I started putting these charts together, to me, it was even to me, I was like, how did I not know this? How did I
Mm-hmm.
not know that beef, just hamburger or a steak,
Mm-hmm.
has more vitamins and minerals than kale or
Mm-hmm.
blueberries or any of these other foods? So I
Mm-hmm.
started making these charts where I took like the top 14 essential vitamins and minerals, and I'd plot them out, the amounts for, say, 100 grams of each of these foods. And beef just kept blowing away kale, blowing away blueberries, and all these things that are considered superfoods, right? And beef had higher nutrient density, more vitamins and minerals across a wider range than any of them. I think against kale, beef has, of those 14, it's like 12 of them that it's higher in. And the only
Wow.
ones that it's not higher in is can't remember one. I can't remember the one. The second one though is vitamin C. So there's two ones where kale is higher, a little bit higher than beef. But vitamin C, guess what? The less carbohydrates you eat, the less vitamin C your body needs.
Mm-hmm.
The more carbs you eat, the more vitamin C your body needs.
Mm-hmm.
And so in reality, if you eat little to no carbohydrates, you have a very low requirement for vitamin C. So even that one isn't that important. And so, it just became obvious. And then if you start looking at organ meats, which our ancestors used to eat a lot of,
Mm-hmm.
we don't eat as much today, in especially in American cultures. But if you look at like beef liver,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing on the planet, I don't think, that's more nutrient dense than beef liver. It's
Mm-hmm.
like nature's multivitamin. I mean, you look at the across the range of every vitamin mineral, it's off the charts. And so I think this is, we wanted to we put a whole chapter in our keto book on this. I added more information in our carnivore book on this because I think we've lost that knowledge of where our
Mm.
vitamins and minerals are coming from. Primarily, you're getting them from your animal proteins, and I think we've lost that knowledge.
I'd like to ask you a few more questions. When we consume macros, when it comes
Yep.
to fat, 75% of the diet is fat. It's coming from fat.
Yep.
So, does that have to come from ingesting fat, or what's
Yeah.
the common misconception on that?
Yeah. So the percentages is one of these misconceptions that came again from the therapeutic ketosis.
Mm-hmm.
So when I talk about therapeutic ketosis, I'm talking about you in the like 1908, I think it was, they started using the ketogenic diet to help control seizures
Mm.
because it works really well for controlling epilepsy and seizures.
Mm-hmm.
The brain really likes to run on ketones. Um, and so uh, those percentages were made 75, 80% of the diet from fat calories was made to make sure blood ketones stayed high enough to get this state where it was beneficial to the brain and keep seizures away. That's still the case today. If the goal is seizure control, then that is a good way to formulate a ketogenic diet for that goal. But that's not weight loss and that's not, general health. That's a very specific state. And so when we look at it from a biology's perspective, and again going back to, if you have diabetes and you want to shrink your fat cells, dietary fat that comes in the diet displaces burning your own fat, right? That's got the fat that comes in your mouth. It really can only go three places. It can either go out through your stool,
Mm-hmm.
which studies have shown that even if you're at 80% or 80 grams of fat in the diet, all the way up to like 170 grams of fat in the diet on the
Mm-hmm.
study, the fecal output remained constant and it was below 10 grams. So
Mm.
it's not going out that way. So from there, it can only go two places. It can get digested and either go burned as fuel, which means you're burning less of your own body fat for fuel
Mm-hmm.
you that you already have on your body, or it can get stored in your fat cells, which increases the amount of fat on your storage. So you constantly have this fat going in and out of your fat cells. It's called fat flux. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you want to burn more off your body, dial the fat down in the diet to force your body to use more of its own fat as fuel. And being in a ketogenic state just primes your body to be more efficient at burning fat for its primary fuel, and then just let your body burn its own stored fat for fuel, and that's fat loss.
I love that. I love that. That's one of the biggest one out there. That
Yes, definitely.
yeah, yeah. I
And
think.
percentages in
Mm,
general can lead to failure because it depends so much on how many calories you're taking in.
mm,
If you're eating 5,000 calories and
right.
you're taking in 10% carbs,
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot more carbs than if you're eating 1,000 calories
Mm-hmm.
and you're taking in 10% carbs, right? So you have this
Mm.
wild variation in macros based on percentages, based on how much you're eating. So we just always tell people track your macros in grams and you'll
Mm-hmm.
be a lot more successful.
Love that. Can you talk more about the uh, counting total carbs versus counting net carbs
Yes.
for success?
Yeah, that's another one that we found over the years that, you know, counting total carbs just works a lot better.
Mm.
Number one. Number two, in the past, again, 2 or 3 years, all these keto products have kind of shown up in the market.
Mm.
We've always been on the side of whole foods. It's always healthiest to, eat whole foods instead of processed foods or
Mm.
packaged foods. But what the problem is with some of these keto products is they'll use things like soluble corn fiber and
Mm.
inulins that are listed under fiber, but spike blood
Mm.
glucose just as much as some sugars. There was an example of I think it's Chalk Zero's fiber syrup.
Right.
Use soluble corn fiber, and they can list it all as fiber, so net carbs look really low. We've had tons of examples now of people with CGMs, continuous glucose monitors. So you're constantly measuring your glucose,
Mm-hmm.
like for type 1 diabetics, um, seeing massive blood sugar spikes from eating that because it is, they can hide it in fiber, but it's really a sugar. And so this is the problem you get into as you start looking at keto products and, oh, net carbs are only 2. Yeah, but you got 18 grams of this quote fiber that really is just sugar. So
Mm,
it's just much better to count total carbs. And we only carbs we subtract are like erythritol
mm-hmm.
and allulose because they aren't digested. That's why there's 0 calories, because they go right through they're basically flushed right through your body. But otherwise,
Mm.
everything else we count.
So you still gotta watch out for those keto products that they say keto, right? Most
Yes.
A lot of those are
Basic
coming out
ingredients.
now, especially
Yeah.
with the recent popularity of the ketogenic diet. There's a lot of products out there for sure that are yeah, not
Yeah.
keto. Mm,
And some of it's good because you get more
mm,
options. Like there's one that we just recently started working with is called Carnivore Crisps. They're
mm,
basically, they have 2 ingredients. Like the pork is just
mm,
pork and salt, and
mm.
it's made crispy like a chip. They're great,
Yeah.
great snack.
Hmm.
Uh, but ingredients matter because a lot of these,
Yes.
like I saw a Duncan Hines keto product. I wouldn't trust that with a 10-foot pole. We know they're gonna throw some junk in there, right? So you gotta watch the ingredients. That's ingredients still matter for health.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You would think you're eating keto, and then next day when you check your strips, you're out of ketosis.
Yeah, it can mess you up, so, especially again some of these fibers that are hidden that are really just sugar.
Mm. What ingredients do you watch out for when buying products? What should the
There's
what should
many.
they?
I think
Mhm.
it'd be easier to say which ones to, it. We actually, I can give you a link. We did it was like baking product, ingredient
Mhm.
massive post. Maria
Mhm.
did
Okay.
listing all the ingredients that we
Mhm.
approve of and the ones that we don't, and why.
Mhm.
I can give you a link for that one to put post in here.
Awesome, awesome, and we'll share that. We'll share that definitely. Um, okay. Ketone levels misconception correlated with weight loss. When you're constantly checking your ketone levels,
Yeah.
that misconception, does it
Yep.
really correlate with weight loss or?
No, it doesn't. And that's another
Mm.
thing that a lot of people starting out, they start to quote chase ketones. So
Mhm.
if you're constantly measuring your blood ketones,
Mhm.
the question is, what do you do if they're not where you want them to be? Right.
Mhm.
So, number one, there's never been any study or anything that's ever correlated higher blood ketones to better weight loss or results. Again, unless it's like seizure control or Alzheimer's, where elevated blood ketones are important.
Mhm.
Outside of that, there's never been any correlation between weight loss and higher ketones. So the question is, if they're a little low, do you take some MCT oil or fat to try to force them up? Well, guess what? That's counter to your goal of fat loss, because that's now more fat. Yeah, you might get a little higher blood ketones, but that's more fat that went into the body, and it displaces burning your own fat again. So you kind of counter to your goal. And another important point about blood ketones is the longer your keto, the more efficiently your body gets at using the ketones. And so you actually see lower blood ketones the longer you're keto. Marie and I have been keto forever, and our ketones are rarely above zero point 0.5 if we ever
Mhm.
test them, because we've been keto for so long. The body's efficient at using them. What are blood ketones? It's just the difference in fuel generated and
Mhm.
fuel used, right? How much ketones were made and then how much was used. What's left over is what's in your blood, right? So if your body's better at using them, you'll have less of them floating around.
Man, I love this. It's packed with information, Craig. If you guys have any questions about the ketogenic diet, the carnivore diet, these are complete with graphs, by the way. These books with references to sources. If you have questions, doubts, Craig's books will answer it for you. It's amazing. Whether it's for you or not, you could learn something. That's why I admire your work, Craig. This
Thank you.
is what everybody needs, and you're helping so many people out there. Um, So thank you for you
Appreciate it.
and Maria for you guys are masters of your craft. So thank you so much.
I really appreciate the kind words.
Last question for you. Where can people find you? Where can people get your book?
Yeah, so we have a blog, mariamindbodyhealth.com,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
with tons of free recipes and information.
mm-hmm,
Like I said, I'll give you the link to this post we recently did
mm-hmm,
on all these ingredients to look
mm-hmm.
for and look out for. We also have a keto-adapted.com website, which has tons of support options. We sell our ebooks out there. We sell, lots of different consulting and packages and support. So those are the two main places. On social media, it's usually Craig Emmerich or Maria Emmerich.
Wow, wow, amazing, amazing, Craig. Thank you so much for coming on. You've provided so much value for my listeners, and I've learned a lot from you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
That was the most incredible interview, guys. Craig's passion and dedication to this lifestyle has led him to write a couple best-selling books in the keto space. These books have helped so many people get their life back on track. I'm going to link it in the description below so you guys can check it out. Thank you for listening all throughout that episode. If you're finding value with this podcast, please follow us to get notified whenever we upload a new episode.